You know, quite frankly, I don't know how to feel about this latest legal drama starring Kim Kardashian. I know, Kimberly's acting and this time she's going viral for starring in something with her clothes on. Let me explain.
The Big Dipper.
Alright, so All Is Fair follows these women, strong independent women who also happen to be paralegals, lawyers, attorneys and everything in between. It's following the events of their lives and their clients. It's pretty much the amalgamation of a bunch of popular legal dramas, and I think that's one of the many problems, but I'll touch on that in just a bit. Okay, so I kind of feel like this show is pretty cliche and I'll tell you why. I feel like the plot is predictable. The first episode had a slow start. I wasn't really feeling it. It starts off with this scenario from 10 years ago about how someone got fired from the law firm, and now 10 years later they have this vendetta against the people who sacked them in the law firm, and now she's just bitter. By the end of the first episode, Kim's character, Allura, finds out that her husband is cheating on her and he doesn't really want to be associated with her anymore because she's rich and powerful, and he's not really doing that much anymore. He's got some Super Bowl rings, but he's no longer in the spotlight, which leads to another problem, him being jealous and insecure. I feel like there's way too many Kimberly inserts. Kim's acting isn't bad, don't get me wrong, Kim is actually pretty good. In some scenes she was way better than Teyana Taylor, and Teyana Taylor is a seasoned actress. I was quite shocked, but I think the reason why Kim comes across as more natural is because she's kind of playing herself. Even in that first episode, she's talking to her girls about how her husband feels insecure because he doesn't want to be attached to a powerful woman. It feels like there were many scenarios in dialogue between the characters, and especially that of Kim's character, that I could tell this was just the writers trying to throw one in so Kim feels like she can relate way more to her character. This has its pros and cons. For one, I think that's why Kim's screen presence and delivery came off as natural, because Allura kind of mirrors her real life in certain instances. The cons are, you as the viewer find it hard to see that Kim is portraying someone fictional. Back to the point of the whole cliche thing. Alright, see, this is the problem when there's a show with a predominantly female cast. It tends to fall into this one trope that's as old as time itself. Let's just say, for example, Gossip Girl or The Good Wife. There's always this arc of rivalry between two women. In this show, there's a few of those cases. For one, we have the woman who was fired from her law firm. She's got this vendetta and she's vindictive in nature, and now she wants revenge. This is clear from the whole bidding scene where she's trying to one-up the lady who fired her from the law firm. It's like, okay, it's pretty obvious how this is going to unravel. Another scenario is the fact that Kim's character, Allura, her husband Chase is having an affair with a receptionist who secretly is obsessed with Allura, another Kim Kardashian insert. There's even a whole exchange between these two characters where she's like, "Oh, everyone just wants to be like you, Allura." And I'm just like, come on, really? This entire thing of female characters being against each other and sleeping with their peers, man, and cheating in general is kind of giving scandal.
Let's not pretend you did that for me, Olivia.
I genuinely feel like I've seen this before. As for the plot, it's kind of a slow burn. I feel like this show, and this season in particular, has a lot of potential, but sometimes the pacing is a little bit too slow, sometimes it's a little bit too fast. But the one thing I do like is that most cliche points or arcs get resolved fairly quickly. That's one thing I have to give them kudos for. Usually in shows like this, when there's an affair, it stretches out for a couple of episodes or even a few seasons. But with this show, the main character finds out by the second episode that her friend is her husband's side piece, and then she confronts the receptionist. Also, there's another character who basically hasn't slept with the husband because he's been sick for years. Some other dude comes in town and then he wants to invite her back to his place for TLC, but she's like, "I'm married." Either way, she goes to see this guy because she's been so lonely. She has wants too. Eventually, she ends up locking lips with him. Luckily for her husband, she doesn't take it a step further because she feels guilty, and she tells her man, "Yo, I met with some other dude and I gave him a little smooch, but nothing happened after that." For whatever reason, Douglas is okay with it. Then they move past it. That's one thing I really can commend this show for. They don't really stretch things out too much, but at the same time, I think they're aware that it's a little bit of a corny start. Don't get me wrong, it's okay. Heavy emphasis on okay. I'm following this show, I'm following this season because I'm actually very curious to see where it goes. I just hope they don't pull a complete She-Hulk. She-Hulk is another attorney show that is a little bit too pro-feminism when it comes to certain things. That's why I also ended up finding some scenes in this show a little bit bizarre, but I get it, I'm not really the target audience. I stuck around though after seeing how good Kim looked. But this Chase dude still cheated, even though he had that bubble butt all to himself. How greedy. Also, can we talk about the acting? I'm no Leonardo DiCaprio. I mentioned this earlier, I'm pretty surprised with Kimberly's acting. It's pretty decent, but I'm not surprised her on-screen presence is good, which makes sense. However, this guy, let me tell you about this guy. I don't know where they found this guy. This guy looks like a Tubi reject. In most of Chase's scenes, I was just rolling my eyes. Everyone else pretty much brings their A game to the project, but Chase, it's like he was a last minute throwaway. The casting director just put him there because they owed him a favor. Sometimes I was watching Chase on screen and I was like, why are you even in this? You're not even saying your lines with any vigor or passion. It's like you just read your script 5 minutes before you came to set and you just wanted to be with Kim. I don't blame you, but I mean, come on, be professional. The best way to describe this show, it's basically Ocean's 8, the 2018 reboot with Rihanna, Awkwafina, etc, but it's a legal drama. Does that make sense? If you don't get it, forget about it, but to me, it makes a lot of sense. This is basically like a Spanish telenovela, but it's American. Sometimes I feel like this show tries way too hard to be progressive. For example, in the first episode, long story short, one of their clients' partners has a weird fetish. He's this ultra rich dude, but he's into being dominated and kinky stuff. Okay, that's fine, we can let that slide, but then again, in the second episode, there's this whole discourse around how one of the characters played by Miss Nash, that when she goes to spoil herself, it ends up leading to some sexual experience. As in, she goes for her toys, and it's just like sometimes it just gets a little bit out of hand. At times it was trying to be a HBO series, but it felt like it was still being conservative with its repulsive nature. This Emerald character, sometimes I feel like that's her only purpose in the show. She always has some outlandish sentence assigned to her. In the third episode, at the beginning, there's this whole dialogue about pricks and how she gets massaged on her. For example, in one of the previous episodes, she's busy telling her friend that, oh, she's going to cut his big Philly off. It gives off a sense that she's a black woman who wants a partner, but at the same time, she's too independent and a boss queen for one. There were so many times I was hearing her speak and I was feeling like she was giving off the same energy as a chronically online Twitter user desperately trying to farm engagement. That's not a reach either, since the show paints that narrative once we as the audience are introduced to her kids. There's a whole scene about just how much she did for her boys, basically playing the role of mother and father. Another problem with this show is that sometimes it tries a bit too hard to be real. I'm putting that in quotation marks. Real. By real I mean it'll try to tackle a serious subject, but then sometimes the approach is mostly shabby. For example, at the start of episode 3, the girls are having this entire conversation about their appearance and aging. Essentially, the scene is trying to tackle body dysmorphia. One of the older women amongst the group is talking about how she walked past the mirror and she couldn't recognize herself because she's old, but she still believes she's young. That's encouraging and empowering, but then it's hard to take moments like this seriously when this is a show where you can quite literally predict the next beat in the story. This very same episode at the start, it was giving the vibe of the Netflix movie, The Substance, but then once we reach the halfway point into the episode, it divulges into something else. Depending on you as a viewer, you may like or you may not like that it kind of matches the LA cliche lifestyle. A smarter thing would have been to subvert this instead, but instead they are leaning into the whole "I'm a rich lawyer and I live in California" aesthetic. The opening sequence of the series pretty much lets you know that it's going to be one of those shows. Additionally, there's no real ties between episodes except for the fact that Kimberly's character is stressed out because her husband wants a divorce, plus he's actually hooking up with a trans person. This is just another self-insert. For those of you who are slightly confused, Kim's been divorced like 3 times and one of her ex-husbands has been accused of getting pegged by Amber Rose. I'm not going to say which one, but I think we all know which one. Anyways, back to my previous point. In the second episode, the main client at the beginning of the episode just jumps off the building. Then that plot kinda gets swept under the rug. Then another law case just pops in the picture and you're like, oh, okay. So I don't know if we can attest this to weak writing or they're doing it deliberately in order to try to tie things up in the end, but sometimes it ends up being returned to when you've lost interest in that storyline, or by now you're too deep into the story and you're just thinking to yourself, so like, did Kim take acting classes for this? Or you end up wondering, I can't see her as this Allura character. That's Kim K pretending to be a lawyer, and I have mixed feelings about it. I've not seen too many shows that follow the legal niche that are able to successfully do this, as in properly keep storylines tightly woven. Maybe Suits, the original one, not that spin-off based in Cali. This shit is fucking garbage. The last time I watched a show about lawyers was She-Hulk, and it faced the exact same problem. She-Hulk was all over the place and All Is Fair is kind of running into some of the same problems Marvel's Attorney series faced. She-Hulk and All's Fair both try to add elements of this boss girl storytelling, but sometimes it falls flat, sometimes it's tolerable, sometimes it's uncalled for. Enough of ripping into this show for a bit. I saw Rotten Tomatoes gave it 0%. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. Guys, this show is not that awful. Don't just look at clips on TikTok and be like, yeah, Kim Kardashian butchered the show. Because believe it or not, that's actually not the case. Kim's acting, as I mentioned earlier, is in the realm of decent to good compared to other people. Someone who I thought was going to show their prowess is Miss Taylor, but I wasn't really feeling her character. Yeah, like I said, Kim's acting wasn't the most jarring thing ever. Something that I found to be slightly more jarring is the fact that Ed O'Neill is playing a character called Douglas. He's somebody's husband and he's been diagnosed with cancer. I can already tell where that plot is headed to by the end of the season. I've watched enough TV shows to know what could possibly happen to his character. It can only go one of 2 ways. The reason why it was jarring is because this is the same dude from Modern Family, so I was just like, oh, it's that guy who was getting kissed on by that fine Colombian actress. Either way, shout out to him and shout out to Glenn Close. Glenn is in this show, as in this is Cruella de Vil, as in this is the lady from Fatal Attraction. Okay, enough glazing. But if there's one thing I really like about this show, I like the cinematography, but more so, I like the fact that everybody's outfit is so fly. The wardrobe department came to flex in this series. What do you think of my opinion on this show? I think all's fair. See what I did there? Get it? Because the show is called All's Fair. Get it? Let me shut up.